with building zip kits and bundling applications and making it something that is a little less rocket surgery. I've put these slides online if you guys can't read it in the back, but that's all right. All right, so what's new? There's tip 430, which adds ZipFS to the core. And that's the same ZipFS implementation that FreeWrap, Toby, and I believe, it's the same ZipFS you're using. Kind of, they're all related. There's some mods and tweaks, but it's worked well. And the idea is that because it's zip-based, we don't have to get wrapped around the axle with also providing the encoder, because you either have a command line zip encoder, or you can pull. Yeah, there's plenty of ones that will work with Tcl from Tcl'20 just fine. So, but we still need to provide the reader in the core early enough so that it could be used for things like loading init.tcl, stuffing the encodings in there, providing the clock command. But I'm also looking at adding ZipFS in a way that T packages can make use of. Because right now, T just assumes that you're building a shared library. Well, it's supposed to be the Tcl extension language, not the shared library extension language. So there's a new branch in Tcl. If you've ever looked at who's maintaining the Tcl M4 macros for T, that fossil repository has a branch with some new tools, including a new Tcl-based build system. Practical is the name of the library. It's a terrible name. If anybody can think of anything better, I'm all ears. We'll have a contest. I don't know. But it is a set of tools that provide all of the silly little functions that you need to install packages, to link a library without make, to feed the right flags to your C compiler. It also provides facilities for pulling source code for other projects down from Fossil and Git, which is just some command line magic, but it's really nice not to have to remember all the command line magic. And my goal in all this is maybe put this together as maybe a T version 4, where instead of relying on make and end make, we could actually throw a Tcl interpreter at the problem of building Tcl's own extensions. Because I don't know if anybody here has had to maintain both a make file, all the autoconf, and the Windows build system, but it's painful. Usually an extension does one well and not the other. And it would be nice to have one set of build automation so that the guy who is writing a Tcl extension is writing a Tcl extension, not maintaining a horrendous build system. So right now, practical because there's a lot of Tcl 8.5 in the wild. I make use of Tcl 00, but I can't use coroutines because if you're on you're on a Mac, the Tcl that's built in that you're going to be building everything else from as a bootstrap, you got the 00 extension, but that's about it that you can count on. And it's going to be a self-contained library, just like the Tcl M4 file. It's just going to be a little library file that goes along in your Tcl config directory. Tip 430, the idea that we want to put ZipFS in the core and in such a way that you can assume that it's there to be able to mount either the DLL or the executable and tell it, hey, this is where you're going to find your init and your encodings and all that without a lot of hackery. And it leaves all the hackery in place that kits use so that they can do something other than trying to trick Tcl into loading Tcl library from a given spot. So that's about all I have for prepared slides, if you call that prepared. Now, let's see. I can do some examples. Roy, I see you're here. Do you have any ideas on stuff? Anything to do with Kit Creator?
Hey, Sean?
Yeah.
Just an observation on what I think the driving spirit is behind some of what you're working on, especially with the build issues.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned being able to edit one Tcl themed, maybe even Tcl coded build instruction script rather than becoming a master of lots of platforms to facilitate make files and make alikes.
Yeah.
We've had a similar issue with documentation over the years, where our documentation is in the man page.
And it's part of my backup system.
Still is. People have talked again and again about, well, why don't we translate that into some base format that we can all use,
140
be
gigs.
that our base that everyone knows, and then automatically generate these other things.
Watching 7,000.
I see an analogy there, and unfortunately it's an analogy of failure, because although people have done that for a long time and made a few attempts at it, it's never come to pass.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to be a downer, but how is this going to be different?
Well, I'm hoping that by trying it two different ways, one of them will work. So maybe it just sneaks in through T, and because the facilities are there, people will use it. Maybe if it sneaks into the core, people will use it because it's there. Carol.
Did you look at any of the previously written make replacements that were rewritten in Tcl'? I think there's been at least 2, maybe 3 of them.
Yes, I stole a tremendous amount from SMake and
Did you look at tabs?
tabs.
Yeah. Totally automated build system. It's another one that will suck down the code from the repository. It's Cookit and
Okay.
CookFS. Good old what's his name from Poland who came
Right.
5 years ago.
Thomas?
Yeah,
Thomas
we'll
Koziak.
check. Pardon?
Is that Thomas Koziak?
No, we'll check.
What's it?
Yeah. It's a very nice system, except that it's very complicated to use. I use his pre-built made things, and I've never been able to build one of my own.
Yeah. It's the trying to make it, even though I've got Tcl script here, one of the one comment I get is right now it's still a little too complicated for somebody who basically doesn't have a direct neural feed from my head to figure out what's going on. But I want to improve that.
Yeah, the biggest thing for all of our projects is documentation.
Yeah.
And everything open source and closed source.
Fundamentally, where does the complexity come from? Can we just cheat and say we're going to just sweep all that complexity away, and this is the box you have to live in when you write a particular extension, where you basically give us, here are some C files, there we go, that's it, no conflict. Maybe point at a Tcl interpreter if it's got the platform and build information in it, or like a Tcl config.
That's the goal. That's definitely where we're trying to get with it.
Sean,
Yeah.
question. Early on, if I'm not mistaken, you had mentioned, that we have T for building C extensions, but we don't have T for Tcl. And maybe I zoned out when you were talking about it, but how does this address the pure Tcl package?
Well, not very well. How's that?
Okay. So I didn't miss it. I was
No,
wondering if I
you
missed
didn't. But yeah, to that end, I mean, there's a reasonably decent installer for Tcl''lib and Tcl''lib. So we've sicked Tcl at the problem of installing software in the past.
Okay.
This wouldn't be a tool for doing another Tcl''lib, for instance. Yes.
Sean, would you like to comment on the extent to this? This would facilitate making ZipFS the norm and the first-class citizen with Tcl distribution.
Well, if we did, well, all we're doing right now is just loading the zip facilities into the core. You don't have to use them. So it would just be there alongside of the zlib and TKPNG, things of that. They're there. If you've got your own, that's great, but it's not going to interfere with anybody.
One of the problems with startup is at what point do you have the interpreter initialized to do a bunch of the virtual file system in Tcl as opposed to in C?
Right.
It strikes me that this might make the start gets a lot cleaner. And maybe we can start thinking about distributions that are distributed by TCA, that's what they call, which is a single file distribution. Every time Don cuts an element, you can put out a start pack for that, make it easier for people to get it. So, is this a stepping stone to that?
Yes, but I was trying to get the camel's nose in the tent, and get us down to one wrapping method, but not in a scary way, and in a way that
exclude anyone else doing whatever they want to do.
right. I also don't want to step on Apple, but they are absolutely tied to having zip in the core, and they have their own way of doing it because APK files are basically signed zips, and so they have to do all sorts of hackery to make their project work that I'm desperately trying not to step on. So do you guys want to see a new T extension that's built on this, or I can show you what a kit make file looks like, and I can get the hell out of Dodge and go get for lunch.
I'd like a better understanding of some of what you're talking about.
All right. So, let's grab an extension here. And right now I'm working on, oops, not that one. I don't think you guys can see any of this from the back end.
See what?
Or from the front.
But I
You can change your screen a little bit.
Font larger.
This is looking at the operating system.
Magnifying glass app.
Command
Shift
Essentially, I've got
plus.
one source repository that's checked out. Let me just open things up. So, in years past, when you make a Tcl' extension, you would have to do all sorts of hacking around inside of AutoConf to get it to play nicely. Actually, switch over browser. So what I've done is I've taken the make file that used to generate, and I've created a Tcl' version of it. So this is all TCL. It does everything the old make file used to do. It just uses a Tcl' interpreter instead of whatever you're making in your platform. And because we're using Tcl', now the one problem we have is that AutoConf does a lot of things to sort out bits of your operating system. And I didn't want to have to replace the Tcl' file all the time. So there's a step right here where we actually go out to AutoConf and have it return to us a key value list of all the old substitutions that it used to make. So those are available for all of our build tools. And I'll explain a bit about the make targets here. But what happens is there are a series of objects that can go off and do specific tasks. And we can modify their configuration, but we're dealing with objects and we don't have to be dealing with what those objects are doing behind the scenes. So I have a base kit object, and that is building my executable. I can talk about that object before it finishes what it's doing. And so one of the things is I'm going to need, because I'm making a static executable, I'm going to need my own static Tcl' TK. So these are all the steps here on any platform to build your own Tcl' TK with all the nasty details handled by the library, including figuring out what are the platform-specific options that you're probably going to want for Mac, Windows, Linux. And you don't have to look them up. We have a standard template of, well, on Linux, you want to pull the ZipFS library. On Mac, you want these frameworks. On Windows, you don't want to touch anything. And then it's just, you still have to have some familiarity with the way things were right now. I'm trying to make it a little better. But these are all Tcl' commands. And that's right, I got lost. And I don't think I answered your question yet, have I?
Trying to understand better what problem it's actually solving. vis-a-vis what sounds like a variety of other solutions that have been used in some way, shape, or form already. Is
Yeah.
it meant to unify? Is it meant to eliminate? What's its purpose?
Permit me to answer, Dave.
Yeah, so I've got some extensions that I build here. So if I go look at,
Sean, show the difference between a build on Windows and a build on Windows for extension. Like the different makeups.
okay. So TKHTML, for example. And what's going on here is there is this main directory looks like a standard AutoComp style project. You have a makefile ini, you've got some, a configure script. But if I want to build this for Windows, that doesn't exist for this package because this particular author didn't write the facilities to do that. So,
Who was that guy?
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah. So if I look at the 3D canvas, the 3D canvas has a completely separate makefile for when I'm building this in Microsoft Visual C. And a completely different makefile for when I'm building on Unix-ish. But I'll be using the same thing if I'm building on Windows, but I just happen to be using the GCC toolkit. Any changes to the build process have to be mirrored in both locations. And there are authors that are experts in one and not the other, but their real passion is writing C code, not figuring out the build system. And actually, if I go look at this particular extension, this extension had all the stuff in the Win directory is actually this sample extension. It never got modified, and everybody who's compiling for Visual C cannot use this extension at all until somebody updates it.
So how much of this is dependent on, are there just lots of different, depending on what compilers you pick, depending on tool chains you pick, these things get complicated.
Yes.
And if I was proposing a practical matter, I had to build on lots of different platforms with lots of different tool chains, and I would tell you, given what the current trends, and I would push harder to, for example, make everything compile with Clang. Clang is going to be compatible for almost everything you're going to build, and it works on every platform the same way, including Windows, and it's supported now for Microsoft. It's a cleaner, I would rather go, I think it's easier to go to a path that says I only have to design my builds for one target on all machines. Clang's available in every Linux distribution. It's available on Windows. It's the only standard compiler available everywhere that's Clang supported. And those native binaries are natively buildable on all platforms. It's a different path, but it says if you're going to take a path to clean up the packages, why not do it that way?
Well,
Clang doesn't support all the platforms TCL does.
yeah. And the other thing is that we've got a ton of legacy stuff out there that we're still going to have to support going forward.
Right, but Clang is going to be compatible. It's GCC compatible.
But it doesn't support with Clang, even though LLVM will support all the platforms TCL does, but Clang doesn't support them right now.
It does.
Like AIX on PowerPC, I think, just got added. But other platforms that TCL's got support for just aren't there yet.
I'd like to talk about that. I build on all those devices you saw up there running different processors, different OS, and I built them all.
Well, it sounds like whatever it is definitely going to be the Clang savvy, to say the least.
Yeah, I have a build of a cross-compiler toolchain project.
These are hard problems, and it's just easier to not keep diverging.
Yeah, I tried to switch to Clang, but it didn't have enough platform support.
Well, my hope was to start.
Just a word about Clang. I did some measurements using SQLite recently, and of all the compilers I tested, Clang's binaries were the largest and the slowest. This is the Clang 3.5.2.
Oh, that's pretty old.
And that's a different discussion we can also get into, but if you're trying to standardize on a way to be able to build binaries that are uniform, it builds better binaries on Windows than Microsoft's compiler does. And in fact, on a lot of platforms, it actually does.
Yeah, I
both.
didn't test this on Windows.
It
so
also
could
does
have-
on-
Could have different results there, I don't.
It also does on Linux, depending on what you set up for.
3.2 is quite old now.
It's
Yeah.
very old.
Well, that's what was installed on my Ubuntu, so.
They like to break compatibility.
4 is it?
Can you show us converting an existing extension from
That's
T
fine.
or
Take that
from
part
T-like
offline.
to?
Yeah, actually, I've got that now. So this is the makefile for ODLib. Now, it still has a makefile because there's a lot of folks who expect there to be a makefile. But constantly throughout the system, you'll see that all that make is doing is calling the little Tcl' shell, loading up the make mechanics inside of the source file, and then calling a command from inside that make. The actual building of the C code works the same way. You still have to list out what your modules are going to be, which is something that AutoConf used to do for us, but the pain in the neck was every time you added a source file or removed a source file, you had to go off and regenerate AutoConf, and some developers weren't good at that.
These type of problems get complicated, aren't they?
Yeah. So what I've done is I've created a markup language so that your library, in a Tcl' notation, can explain to us where all the bodies are buried. So this is a mechanism. Now, this is running inside of an object, and this object has methods. So you'll see that we're doing a lot of my this and a my that. And one of the methods for a library object is it's going to add a new product. And it has an auto detection mechanism, so if you give it a .c file, it knows I'm going to compile this. If you give it a .tcl file, it knows it's going to read that and perform some instructions, and you can actually dynamically generate a lot of your API using Tcl code that's ultimately going to shoot out to C. I ended up going off and recreating little bits of critical, but not much, just enough to write connective tissue to start an executable up. And then you can also do things that your header files used to do, for instance, adding includes and library dependencies.
One thing, by the way, the point interest for at least on Windows, the entire IntelliSense and code base and all the analysis stuff is actually SQLite database. So if you have any of the Visual Studio tools and you let them look at any of this stuff, they will give you a complete database of how the whole thing's put together. And you can build it, you can actually reflect on that, pretty easily decompose how it works.
Yes.
I was one of the people who pushed really hard to do that with part of the tools kit.
Can you clarify, like what's your objective being like inside of Tcl as opposed to outside of Tcl? Like you can go and build any system, right?
Right.
So, like, for example, like that's so the core pieces that you need from inside of Tcl. Can you talk a little bit about like what your objective?
Oh, actually, I think I've drifted into my paper for later today. So I'll be talking about this library later, and I just went into the wrong demos. All right, so for getting back to kits, right now all we really intend to do is just shim in so that you can map up what's executable, and there'll be some conventions in there for it to hunt for init.tcl and the encodings. Was that what your primary question was?
Yeah, so I'm just a little lost in like there's so and dealing with AutoConf all the time and hating it.
Yeah.
And using, say, Swift Package Manager and saying like, let's just make one of these for Tcl.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, why not, right? And
Yeah.
that's where it gets to that inside-outside thing. And it's like, well, if the requirement is to support every platform that's ever been, that Tcl's ever been on, then that's going to be really tough.
Yeah. One of the things I do add is T can now refer to other T packages. So, for instance, I'm building an executable, and I know I'm going to want to embed the following extensions. There's now a quick little write-up that you can do on, I want SQLite, which SQLite, where to get SQLite, what's the init file for it, and this is actually targeting building a static executable. So it's going to go off and write automatically all of that loader for all these packages. And I'm getting the time there. I'm trying to make it make things a little easier. I'm not necessarily succeeding very well, but there's the attempt. Yeah, I can demo this. We'll do a work in progress session, and I can walk you through some of the other, what it actually produces and how it works a bit more on the internals. Definitely look at C-line stuff.
I'm curious to understand some of these buildings.
Right. But basically I'm trying to figure out a way to make Tcl' a decent automation language for building Tcl', instead of making Tcl' developers learn a whole lot of external languages that may or may not apply to their particular platform. All right, thank you very much, and I'm here till Friday. Try the deal.